שם השם נעשה ונצליח. הגיע לפרשת מצורע, וגם כן זה שבת הגדול. Amen. Everything that we're learning, all the Torah that we'll be learning tonight is going to be Le'ilui Nishmat Tzion ben Meir. We should have an aliyah. You should go Mechayel, Chayel, Began Eden. This week's Parshat Metzorah, really every year, Tazriah Metzorah is together. It's because it's kind of very much connected. In Tazriah, we learn about the person, how he gets Tzarat. In Metzorah, the beginning of Parshat Metzorah really tells us about the Tahara process, how he comes out of being a Metzorah. He brings the birds, he brings the other stuff that he needs to bring and becomes pure. There is a very interesting Zohar, and the Zohar Kadosh says the word Metzorah really is the word Motzi Shem Ra. Someone who gets Tzarat is somebody who's Motzi Shem Ra. Right? Motzi Shem Ra, he says bad things about people. Right? Somebody who makes up stuff, says things about people.
He wants to make himself good, so he said the other guy is bad.
Right, he's building himself up by putting someone else down. Right? It's two ways to build yourself up. You can build yourself up by you yourself building yourself up, or it's easy to knock the other guy down so you're standing taller. Right? This is a Motzi Shem Ra. Someone knocks down the other guy. Now, the Zohar continues. And the Zohar says something very interesting, something that we mentioned here in the past, but something extremely, extremely important and very, very interesting. Listen what the Zohar says over here. The Zohar Kadosh Sefer Vayikra 46 says, just as a person is punished for speaking Lashon Hara, speaking Motzi Shem Ra, saying these type of things, so too is a person punished if they have the ability to say something good and he didn't say. This, a lot of times we think Lashon Hara is saying bad things, so I stopped. I'm saying it. Okay, I'm a good guy. But the Zohar is saying if you have the ability to say something good and you didn't say, this is also a sin. A person has to be careful.
Sometimes you can't say the truth. It's also like Lashon Hara.
In what regard you can't say the truth?
Like about someone, that is the truth. Because sometimes it's also
Right. Even saying the truth, something bad about somebody,
which is true.
That's Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is when something is true.
Yeah.
It's also true that sometimes you can't say something good about somebody either.
It's not only true. It's not only true.
But it could be true.
Well, what we said before, if you want to build yourself on the other guy, you can say all
Right,
kind
so
of
Motzi Shem
nonsense.
Ra is when you're making up things, lies. Lashon Hara applies even if it's the truth, but it's a bad thing you don't want to
For
talk
him.
about.
Bad for him.
There's also sometimes you might be touching upon this where sometimes you can't even say something good about a person when it's really going to affect them in a bad way. For example, there's somebody who's a gever, he's an asher, he's a rich person, and he helps out people and stuff like that. And all around, you go around Old Town and telling, oh, this guy gives out money to anybody who comes to his door. Now everybody's going to come flying to his door for money. So that also you have to be careful about. But the Zohar Kadosh is telling us something even more amazing. He's saying that when you have the ability, someone was a Hazan, right? For example, someone was a Hazan. Someone went up and he tried his best, he did his best, and he did his prayers, right? And you now have the ability to come over and say, Hazaku Baruch Shkoyach, beautiful davening, and you didn't do that, that's an Avera. When you don't go over and say a good word, that in itself is a problem. Now that's a very, very strong statement. They once came to Rav Chaim Kanevsky and they asked him as follows. You know, in the parasha it says, when Moshe Rabbeinu killed the Mitzri, right? And the next day, Datam v'Aviram, they got in a fight, and they said, oh, we're going to go tell Paro, and Moshe said, right? Now I know why it is. Why? He says, Lashon Hara. So they asked Rav Chaim Kanevsky, for two people who are speaking Lashon Hara, now all of Klal Yisrael is going to get punished and have to stay in Galut, that's why they're all there? And Moshe said, I know why we're all in Galut, or we're not getting out, because of these two people. Is it really fair because of these two people, no one else can get out? So Chaim Kanevsky says, based on the Zohar, he says the rest of Klal Yisrael was punished because they didn't get up and say something. They should have told the Tam Aviram, you sit down, Moshe Rabbeinu was right. Nobody said anything. Everybody was quiet. Everybody was quiet. Nobody wants to talk. When you don't want to talk, you are now punished as well. Right? Hashem sends down the Malachim during the Churban of the Beit HaMikdash. And the Midrash says, the Malachim come and said, Hashem, should we save the tzaddikim? Hashem said, yes. Put the letter Tuf on their head, and they're going to be saved. Right? Then, Midat Adin comes and says, Hashem, we can't save them. Hashem says, why not? He says, you know why? Because they never spoke up to anybody to tell them to change. They never said to somebody, you're doing something wrong. So Hashem said, okay, you know what? You're right, let's punish them also. Midat Rahamim says, what did Midat Rahamim say? It says, but Hashem, even if they would have said, no one would have listened to them. What did Midat Adin say? But they didn't know that. They didn't know that. So, because you didn't know that doesn't mean you can stop, because your job is to say something. That's what the Zohar Kodesh is telling us here. When you have the ability to say something, you have to say something. Lahavdil, the MTA says, see something, say something.
Only for good, not for bad.
It says you have to.
Because if you say, if you have ability to say for bad, like to warn somebody, you know.
But that's good. When you tell someone not to do something, that's a good thing.
No. If you tell somebody, look, be careful from this guy. He's a thief.
Mm-hmm.
It's allowed to say or not? Let's say the guy is a thief.
Maybe he's a thief with you. He decided to, but not with him.
If he's a thief, he's a thief.
If it's Noida Hadavar that he's a thief, then yes, of course you're allowed to tell someone. If it's
he's a really thief,
if it's really a thief, you have to tell. You have to tell.
say, because sometimes you are not sure. Maybe you know he's a bad person, but you are not sure. So maybe you are not allowed to say. But if he's really a
Sometimes they say
criminal,
maybe he wants to, maybe he repented and you said something about him. He's a thief. Maybe he said, do whatever.
Yeah, we don't have to believe a Rasha we don't believe that a Rasha repented. We don't have to believe that until we actually see that. If a tzaddik does a sin, you have to believe that at night he already made tshuva. For Rasha that's known that he's a thief, there's no reason to believe that night he did tshuva. It's very possible he did, but we don't have to believe that. So that has to become now the hazakah that he's not like that anymore.
yeah.
The Peninim says as follows. The Peninim says that if you don't speak up and warn somebody that they're doing something wrong, you now become just as much as responsible for their wrong actions because you did not talk. So talking, really, according here, the Zohar Kodesh is saying, Chaim Kanevsky is saying, Peninim is saying, they're all saying the same thing. That talking is two parts. It's a part where to refrain from talking, and there's a part where you have to know when to talk.
You tell me who's gonna go to another Jew and tell him, and if he's driving a car or doing whatever he's doing, smoking a cigarette, hey, you're doing bad thing, you know, you're a Mechalel Shabbat. Who's gonna say?
And that's an issue. That's an issue.
I'm asking you, who's gonna say?
That's an issue. It is. Listen to this. There was a German Protestant pastor. He himself ended up in the concentration camps during the war. And he wrote the following. He said, in Germany, they first came for the Jews. And I didn't speak up because I'm not a Jew. Then they came for the communists. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade union. Then they came for the gypsies. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't a gypsies. Then the Nazis came for the Catholics. I didn't speak up because I'm a Protestant. Then they came for me. And by the time they came for me, there was no one left to speak up to. You know, so you have to speak up. If you don't speak up, it's just going to end up cycling and domino effect until it becomes a very, very terrible thing. Here he brings an interesting story about taking the opportunity, taking the chance to do something. To when you have it, this is really telling us that you have a chance to say something, you have a chance to do something good, take that opportunity. Don't let that opportunity go through your hands. There was a successful businessman who lived on the West Coast, and he needed a vacation. He decided he was going to take a short trip to Eretz Yisrael, and he was going to go there, and there's a seminar there, he was going to spend some days there, it's going to be a vacation, he's going to relax. was going to be special speakers there. The food was going to be great. And listen, he was a successful businessman. It was just money. And he decided he's going to make that trip. The Sunday before he was going to the trip, he decided to call his father to see how his father was doing. And they were talking. And his father seemed, oh wow, his father said, wow, it sounds so nice that you're going on this nice trip. Oh, I wish I could go to Eretz Yisrael again. And in a minute of clarity, the man said, you know what, Ta? Pack your bags. Come with me. His father said, no, it's too much. It's that. He said, don't worry, I'll pay for everything. Let's just spend time together. No, he convinced his father. His father said, okay. And they both went to Eretz Yisrael. And they spent some time there. It was very big quality time. They really enjoyed their time together. The trip was a huge success. The father and son had a great time. They returned from Eretz Yisrael. And they both went their ways and they went home. A few months went by. And every time the son spoke to his father just said, you know, it was amazing, that trip. I still think about it, a great time we had. That same summer, the father got sick. Ended up going to the hospital, and a few days being in the hospital, he died. And one of the last things he told his son while he was in the hospital, he said, thank you again for that trip. It meant so much to me. And the son said, imagine that last minute I didn't say, Ta, come with me. My father never would have had that excitement and that thing, that ability to feel this happy and going with me and spending time, quality time. I think what the Zohar is trying to teach us, what the Peninim al Torah is bringing out here, is that it's very important to take that opportunity to say something, to do something. Here, Rav Zev Smith, in the Sefer Alona Aleh, he writes about the same Inyan, the same idea of a person having to say something good. And if you don't say something good, it's that you're making a hit. He says, it says in Pasuk, Mavet v'chaim b'yad lashon. Mavet v'chaim b'yad lashon. That life and death is in the hand of the tongue. It means the tongue is in charge of life and death. So we understand death. That we understand. You say something bad about somebody, you kill him. How do you understand Haim? That the life is in the hand of the tongue? The exact same way. Because you can build somebody up. I had once a person I worked for, the principal I worked for in a business yeshiva. I was a teacher there for a few years. And the principal said, I can build you and I can break you. This is what he said.
Yeah.
Zion ben Meir.
Please take what you want. Please.
And this was Rav Zev Smith says, is that you can build someone, you can give them Haim just by talking. Haim b'yad lashon. Haim b'yad lashon. He says, halashon here in the pasuk he quotes it as lashon. B'yad halashon.
This is from either Mishneh or Kohelet. I'm not sure.
I think it's Mishneh, no?
Yeah.
Okay. He says, some places where we need to use this. You hear Rabbi Yosef? He says as follows. Children. Number one is you can build or break your children. Children, you don't know what happened to them in school. You don't. As much as they tell you, they don't tell you everything. They just won't. It's the way kids are. But what happens if at home you can build them up, right? Make them feel good, make them feel superior. Then whatever that comes to them at school, they're going to be able to handle. Amen. They're going to be able to handle because you built them up. Same thing he says with our family members, especially our spouses. Very easily to destroy them with words and very easily to build them with words.
Yeah.
Not only that, you have to think about what you're going to say.
Very much.
Very much. Because women perceive things differently than men. Right?
Sometimes I say good things to my wife.
And it still comes out bad.
Exactly.
And he's married quite a while.
She takes it to a different place.
Exactly. You have to think.
I said, why are you thinking like this? He said, I know what you're saying. What do you mean you know what I'm saying? I'm saying good.
So he says when it comes to family, it comes to spouses, very important. He says that the power of a compliment, being able to thank somebody, say something, you should never ever take that lightly. The Zohar HaKadosh tells us that if you have the ability to say something good and you didn't, that in itself is an Avedah. That's what they're telling us here from Shlomo HaMelech, from the Zohar HaKadosh, from Chaim Kanevsky, the Peninim al Torah, they're all saying the same idea, that you have to be able to say good things to people, speak up before it's too late, and when you have the ability to do something, to do it. So this is our first lesson on this week's parasha. Let's move on to a second lesson for this week's parasha. On this week's parasha, we have that sometimes a miraculous event can happen, that you can have tzarat on a bayit, on a house. The guy comes home and he sees in his house there's a discoloration, a stain on the wall. And they have to go and ask the Kohen, right? And if the Kohen comes,
today they call it what they call it today?
What is it?
No.
Mold.
Basement. Mold. Today mold.
Right. So so the Kohen would come, and if he thought it was tameh, he would tell them to take everything out of the house. This way, because if you say it's tameh and everything is in the house, the whole house, everything inside becomes tameh. Can't use anything. Everything has to go mikvah. Everything has to go through the process.
Take everything out.
Why would you have to do it?
If there is a negat tzaraat on the walls of the house, so the Kohen would come and have to look at it, examine it, and if it was tameh, he would say it's tameh, and the whole house becomes tameh. He would send everything out. He would check it. Right. You mark it. You check it to see if it grows.
For 7 days, let's see what's going to happen.
Right. And now, eventually, what happens? Rashi tells us, very interesting. Rashi says that when the house got tzaraat, it was actually a good thing. Why was it a good thing?
Because the Jew would have to break it and
Yeah.
go.
Ah, very good. So the Goyim, the Canaanim, when the Canaanim were leaving, right, they saw the Jews were coming, they had pacha, they got scared, so they said, we run away. They left the houses. But they said, you know what? I'm not going to give them my gold and silver. I'm going to put my gold and silver in the wall, and this way it hides there. So what happens now? Now the Jew gets sarat on the wall. He thinks this is the end of my house. They break down his house. Kohen says, Tameh. They found gold. And everything turns out to be again. Okay. So Rav Yaakov Galinsky, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha, says that this is the rationale, this is the reason behind Hazal's statement. Hazal tell us in Masechta Berachot that the same way a person makes a bracha on something that's good, something good happened. You had a baby, you said Shehiyanu on the Brit, right? You had something good happen in your life, you make a bracha in happiness. The Gemara in Masechta Berachot says the same way it happens in happiness. If something bad happens to you, you also have to say a bracha dayan ha'emet with the same feeling.
If you can.
How? How could a person have the same feeling?
If you can.
So Yaakov Galinsky says, because in the truth, just like the way the house was destroyed, you thought that was the end of the world, but really it was good because you found so much money. The same is there, because even though something bad is happening, it's really good. There's a silver lining there. It's actually very good. He actually brings down a story here.
Because you don't see the whole picture.
Right.
You don't see the future. Maybe this has to happen, and then something much bigger could happen. But this small one happened now. So this is like
You see a part of the picture. Harav Eliyahu David Rabinowitz Teomim, the Aderet, he had a daughter that died young, and they were waiting for the funeral, and he wasn't being able to be found. They couldn't find him. For a long time, they're looking for him. Finally, he came out of the house. They asked him, what took so long? What were you doing? He said, I was trying to remember the simcha I felt when my daughter was born, and how I felt at that time, and I was now trying to bring back that feelings now that my daughter died. Because when you bless, when it's good, you have to bless the same way that it's bad. Now, this is obviously a very big madrega. This is a big person, but it requires emunah to believe that whatever Hashem does is good. Yaakov Galinsky says a story about himself. He says him and a bunch of yeshiva students, were learning in Lithuania, in the Novodoker yeshiva, and the Russians came into Lithuania, and in Russia it was asur to learn Torah, so they came to the yeshiva and they came to arrest all the yeshiva students. And they came to arrest the yeshiva students, and a lot of yeshiva students got arrested, including Rav Yaakov Galinsky. And they ended up getting to Siberia and to the labor camps. And there were many students that survived. They didn't get caught. Harav Gershon Liebman was one of those people that survived. Many years later, he saw Rav Yaakov Galinsky in Eretz Yisrael. He survived World War II, and he told Rav Yaakov Galinsky, you should know, the day that you were caught by the Russians, all of us who didn't get caught thought that you guys had it bad, and we had it good, we survived, and we didn't get caught. But he says, 2 days later, after the Russians left Lithuania, you know who came in? The Nazis came in. And when they came in, they didn't send us to Siberia. They killed half of us immediately, and the other half they sent to the concentration camp. So when you got caught, we were all thinking that you guys are having it bad, but really you had it good, because all of you went to Siberia, and most of them who went to Siberia survived, and they were able to come out of it. But those who went by the Nazis, it was finished. Most of them died. So he said, you never know. You never know. What's good right now, what's bad right now is really good later. You don't know. You can't see it. Rav Yaakov Galinsky was shared this amazing, interesting story that there was a yeshiva bacher in the Novodaka yeshiva that was not very bright. He was not very smart, and people felt bad for him. He couldn't even do simple math. He couldn't learn well, and people worried him, how is he going to make parnasah when he gets out and stuff like that. And one day someone said to him, why don't you buy a lottery ticket? Maybe you'll make money that way. And he I don't play lottery. But then all of a sudden the next day he went and he bought a ticket. They drew the lottery and he won. He won over 5,000 rubles in his day. It's a huge sum of money. So people came over to him and said, how did you do it? No one ever thought you'd be anything, and you won the lottery. He says, I'll tell you the truth. The night before I played the lottery, I had a dream. In my dream, they showed me 3 numbers. 17, 18, 370. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with these numbers? I said, it must be that they're telling me the numbers for the lottery. So the people say, but the number of the lottery is a 3-digit number. It's 1 3-digit number. One digit, 2 digit, 3 digits. It's not 17, 18, 37. He says, I know. That's why I made the math. I added up 17, 18, and 370, and I got 415. So I put down 415, and I played it, and I won. And one of the guys there said, but Tzaddik, 18, 17, and 370, it's 405, not 415. He said, oh, Baruch Hashem, I don't know how to do math. Everyone felt bad for him. He doesn't know how to do math. How is he going to make money? Meanwhile, because he didn't know how to do math, he ended up winning the lottery ticket. He ended up winning the lottery, and he made the most of everybody. There's another classical story that they say, how there was a man who came from Europe, and he came to America, and he was looking for a job. So he saw that they had a shamish, a job for a gabbai in the shul, a shamish to help clean up the shul and stuff like that. So he wanted to apply for it. He went to apply for it, and the board member said, I'm sorry, you're a greener, you're from the old country, you speak only Yiddish, there's no English by you, this is already a modern shul, we speak English, we can't hire you. You're not going to be the shamish here. So he said, okay, what are you going to do? He went outside, he said, I'm going to try to do some schar, some business to sell and buy. So he started buying some knickknacks, tchotchkes, some toys, and he started selling it. Took a cart, and he started selling it around Manhattan. Business started to go well for him. So he bought another cart, and he had other people working for him now. And he started doing all his toys. Eventually, his business became so big that he became one of the big toy distributors here in New York. And one day, he was sitting in a business meeting, and so he had the business meeting. So they started giving him papers and stuff like that. And he doesn't know how to read or write in English. So he goes to his assistant and he gives it. And the assistant's reading it and he tells him, sign here, sign here. And now the guy who he's doing business with says, why, you don't know how to read or write? He says, no, I don't know how to read or write. He says, why, you're a multi-millionaire and you don't know how to read or write. Imagine if you knew how to read and write, what would you be? He says, no, if I knew how to read and write English, I would be the shamish in the shul. So, having that handicap, some people think they have a handicap and they're over with, but you don't know that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has many ways to deal with things.
Wow.
Your job is just to have emunah in Hashem. It looks bad right now. That's not our business. Our business is to believe in Hashem and know that everything is going to be in the end good. Now, there is a question on all of this that we just learned. You get a tzarat on the house, and then you break down the house and you find a treasure. The question that needs to be asked is, why did he get tzarat on the house? He said, Lashon hara, motzi shem ra. He did other averot, and he got tzarat on his wall. So now we say, you break down your house, you find the treasure. What do you mean? He got tzarat because of averah.
That's not everybody.
Okay, good. So that's Rav Palm's answer. Rav Palm brings down like that as well.
Break the house in there. So
right.
If anybody got tzarat, you should be very, very happy.
Exactly. Right. Okay, good. So Rav Palm.
So he doesn't need the Kohen. The minute he see the tzarat,
knock it down.
The hammer, boom, boom, boom.
Right.
Okay, the gold is going to be out.
Okay, your Palm says like that. He says not everybody found treasure. That's true. But I want to bring you here from Rav Reuven Karlenstein, who says a very interesting idea. He says the truth is, everybody in life has to go through Yesurim.
Right.
Life is, you have to go through pain and troubles. Sooner or later.
Yes.
Sometimes it'll be good for you, you have a little nice time, and then all of a sudden there's always something going on. I mean, think about it, right before Pesach, how much you have to do? Right? Last year I was trying to kasher my stove top, and I was putting way too much fire. All the turners melted. I couldn't shut down my oven. I had to go to the gas, and then I had to.
What did you say?
I was kashering the stove.
Fire?
So someone said, take a blech and turn on all the fires. Now I didn't read it right. We're supposed to turn out one fire at a time and leave it for 10 minutes. I said, okay, I'm going to turn on all the flames.
A blech?
Yeah, like
Put a blech on
the top of the stove top.
Yeah.
And I just leave the fire on for 10 minutes. It's going to become so hot, so it will kasher the grates and everything, the burner, the grates and everything. So, and it actually said, warning, this is a dangerous thing to do. I said, no, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I have the fire on, what will be? So I went ahead and I put it on, and I covered it nicely, and I put silver foil to cover it even more.
Because the fire goes.
Right.
When the fire doesn't have where to go.
It just started to melt. The knobs melted off. That I couldn't even turn the stove off.
I don't understand it. Why don't you use easy off?
I wanted to try the new method of kashering. No, I shut off the gas and everything. I'm thinking, why I need these problems? Right? Everybody has some sort of problem. Everybody has some sort of issue. That's what Rav Reuven Karlenstein says over here. He says the trick is, the real question is how do you deal with Yesurim? How does a person deal with it? How will he react?
If you have a big emunah,
if you have big emunah, and he says, Gamzu l'tova, the Shulchan Aruch says, if you have a hard time, you say, Hakol, everything that Hashem does, he does for good. When a person does that and he succeeds in his challenge, then he'll find the treasure.
I'm not saying you have to dance when this happens, but at least say, Hashem,
Don't kick Hashem and say, I'm upset with Hashem.
Okay, thank you.
But let's say if the person did something wrong and he's trying to repent, because he's not going to think like, you know what, God gave me this stream. It was a person's fault. At some points,
He has to look what
You have to Heshbon Nefesh. Look what I did wrong. That's part of the Yisurim. Why is Hashem doing this to me?
what did I do? Why is this coming?
But now the question is, how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Do you accept it by Hava and say, Hashem, thank you, I'm taking it? If a person does that, then he'll come out with a treasure. If a person gets upset, then he'll break down his house and he won't find the treasure. You have to know how to take Yisurim. Everybody has. Abraham Avinu went through 10 tests. Why did he go through 10 tests? We spoke about this before. A test builds character. A test that a person goes through, a challenge a person goes through, builds a person to who he is. You have to go through challenges to become a better person. If you don't have any challenges, you don't move. You're just the same old guy. It's like no point to move, no point to live. You have to have challenges to live.
Better and better.
There's a famous story, a true story. Today everybody knows of the house of Brisk Limud, the way to learn Torah, on the way the Brisk yeshiva learns. What many people are not familiar with is the story. Amen. it's the story with how this famous dynasty of Torah scholars became into this world. There was a man, Harav Moshe Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha. He was a wealthy man. He inherited from his parents a forest of hardwood. They use it for lumber, for flooring, for everything.
Wow.
He was millionaire. Amen. And he started to invest in other businesses, and everything was going well.
Wow.
And then one day, one of his business investments went down, and all his money went with it, and he was left penniless. Now, he had to start taking tzedakah. Up until this point, he was the man who gave out tzedakah to everybody. Harav Chaim Volozhin lived at that time, and he convened a special beit din to examine Rav Moshe Soloveitchik to see what sin he did that caused him to lose all his money. And they did, and they looked, and they said he had one avirah. What was one avirah? Our Chachamim say you're not allowed to give more than 20% to tzedakah. And his avirah was, he gave more than 20%. Because of that, that's why he lost all his money. Now, Rav Moshe Soloveitchik had nothing to do anymore. He had no business. So what did he do?
Learn Torah.
Instead of getting depressed and sitting home, he said, I'm going to go to learn Torah. He went to Beit Midrash. He started to learn Torah. He started to write Hidushim. People saw how smart he was, how talented he was. Eventually he became the Av Beit Din of Kavna. He became a huge Talmid Chacham.
Yeah.
His children and his grandchildren his grandchild was the famous author of the Beit Levi, right? The Yosef Deb HaLevi, the famous Beit HaLevi, all by Emunah. And they became today Soloveitchik. The family Soloveitchik is synonymous. All right. So Rav Chaim Volozhiner, when he saw Moshe Soloveitchik became so big, he said, now I understand. Now I understand why he was zochet to this. He lost his money. He didn't go crazy. He didn't take it. He took his challenge. Right? It's like having tzarat on the house. Everything got lost. But then he found the treasure. What treasure did he find? He found the treasure of being a big Talmid Chacham, that his family became big Talmid Chacham. Till today, the Soloveitchik family is synonymous with Torah, with the special way of learning Torah. Let's just take one more look at this concept of this tzarat on the house. The way Rav Pam looks at this. You know, I'm very, very biased to always learn Rav Pam's teachings. Growing up in Yeshiva Torah Vadat, all my Rebbeim were either Talmidim or Rav Pam or something like that. So I always heard Rav Pam. And Baruch Hashem, Rav Zev Smith put out so many svarim from Rav Pam on Haftorah, Pirkei Avot, all these different things. That even when Rav Zev Smith in his svarim, when he writes about it, all my Rebbeim always mention Rav Pam. So I'm always in the Mahalach, always thinking of how Rav Pam would think and how Rav Pam would learn. So Rav Pam on this week's Parashah, he says, you know what? The lesson you should take out about the Negaim on the Batim, the Tzarat on the house. So you know what it is? He phrased it, he coined the name, a poor millionaire. Why? The person has a house. Imagine he's living in this house with his 10 kids, his wife, and they have no money, and they're living on check to check. And what really is, in his house, in the walls, he's a millionaire, but he doesn't know about it. Rav Pam says that really applies to all of us. Why? We live life, and we think we're Parshat Yidden, we're simple people, we just come, we go. But the truth is, we have talents and abilities inside of us, hidden away, and we never let it come out. And he says that means you're a poor millionaire. You're walking around with $1 million in your pocket, and you're walking around as if you don't even know it's there. Rav Pam says how many times he's seen it. People start to, someone asks them to do a mitzvah, can you raise some funds for a kala? Right? They start to collect, and then all of a sudden they see they're successful, and they get into it, and they start doing it more. He says unless they were given that opportunity, they would never have known they had that ability. He says Today you look around, you see in the world there's a lot of tzedakah, hesed organizations. A lot of those organizations started because someone had a difficult time and someone tried to help them. And then one thing led to the next, and it became today the big enterprise that it is. How did it happen? No one thought, I'm going to be it. And then people just started it, realizing they were good at it, and they continued doing it. Rav Pam says that in today's world, there is so much to be done, and every person has to make his or her own contribution. To be Harbatza Torah, to spread Torah, or to spread Hesed. He says it's important to look at ourselves and to look at our nishamot and realize it's filled with treasure. That we have so many abilities. No one should say it's not me. He can do it, she can do it, but it's not me. That's not true. You might not be able to what he can do. You might not be able to what she can do, but you can do what you can do. And what you can do, you have to do. And that's why every person should realize that he's full of treasure. He has malek kesef, malek zahav. He has plenty of everything. He just has to now find it and start to use it. And so, let's to review quickly the 3 lessons that we learned from this week's parasha. First, we had the Zohar HaKadosh statement. The same way you have to be careful with not to say. You have to be careful to make sure that you do know what to say and make sure you say it. Don't let that opportunity slip out of you. The second lesson that we learned is, even though something looks bad, it might really be good. And the person has to thank Hashem for the bad just as the good, because it's really good. There's a silver lining in everything. The third lesson that we learned was that when a person has yisurim, he has pain, he has problems, he has to truly, truly believe that this is a test from Hashem, and that if he's able to do with ahava, Hashem will definitely give him treasure. And the final lesson that we took out from Rav Pam was that everyone has latent treasure in him, potential that he needs to bring out and bring to this world. And Rabotai, I want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Timukon Baracha. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to do the Orach Chaim now, but the recording we're going to finish over here. So I want to wish everybody Shabbat HaKadosh Shalom. Be'ezrat Hashem, we should all be zochet to bring in Pesach. This week, Thursday, it's going to be B'dikat Hametz, right? So we're not going to have shir that night. Be'ezrat Hashem, I'm going to put out a video. On Pesach. I'm going to try Bli Neder by Tuesday, Wednesday. Little Devei Torah on the Haggadah, something inspirational that you can say some stories. And we'll spread it out this way. It'll be out there before the Chag. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.